Do you observe a potential risk for the Hizmet movement of getting too politicized as a result of the movement's ongoing persecution in Turkey? If so, how could it be counterbalanced? At this point, if you can please share the broadcast so I can make sure it at least reaches enough people. I will do that on Facebook as well, so that we can actually start without an interruption. So the first question is, do you observe a potential risk for the Hizmet movement of getting too politicized as a result of the movement's ongoing persecution in Turkey? If so, how could it be counterbalanced? First of all, as the person who asked the question presume that the Hizmet movement is already politicized, I agree with that statement. It is politicized, but what he's asking is it getting too much politicized as a result of the persecution in Turkey? And my short answer to that question is yes, it is getting too much politicized because of the ongoing crisis in Turkey, and also there are some reasons why that politicization is happening. I think one is, of course, the persecution. The Hizmet movement is the direct scapegoat about everything in Turkey, and the depth of the crisis in Turkey, the way it is going. In another video I try to explain that as almost a step-by-step a genocide in the making about it. The polarization is beyond, and like it's beyond the thresholds now. It will be very hard to come back from that point, even if it stops now. People are used to blame the Hizmet people for everything at this level, and that's dangerous. The ability to cope with this crisis has not been very successful on behalf of the movement, and there is a lack of strategy towards, for next 5-10 years, how this psychology will play out and what the movement's priorities should be, and that makes people only look towards Turkey and towards Turkey and try to follow the news in there, and also just follow the news in Turkey and be affected by those news. So for these reasons, the politicization is increasing. People look at Turkey and try to react what's happening, try to respond, and try to act, basically define their daily plans according to what happened in Turkey. So that's a very dangerous reactionary situation that we are seeing. I'm trying to emphasize on this as much as possible. Anyway, so sorry, I've been distracted with this phone call. So the politicization has reached a point where actually the movement is not only being a tool within the politics to explain government's failures in Turkey, or to explain all the securitizing policies in Turkey, the extraordinary situation, or the decrease, the state of emergency and everything. It's also become the movement itself, or the people within the movement, actually almost put themselves into the position of a political party, and not only a political party, as far as we can say. Many people within the movement assumes themselves as almost an opposition party. for understandable reasons, because the government party is actually persecuting the movement politically and with political tools and with political arguments. But the problem is that it's not only an opposition party, it's almost, for some, it's like a blood feud. So an opposition party actually has a responsibility to devise alternative politics. But in case of Hizmet Movement, it's not the case. It is almost a constant crisis that doesn't allow movement members to move on in their lives in abroad, or devise new directions towards the West or to democratic countries for at least 5 to 10 years. I think the movement and its members needs to make a move from this crisis and move forward. And with that move forward, I mean, like, redefine the arguments, you know, and continue to serve as they claim to serve humanity. And in a way, I was trying to say that in previous conversations, if you watch one of the Hizmet talks, that I talk about the future of Hizmet movement, and I talk about this, the movement in crisis, and however the individuals individually and as a movement, as an organization, if they can come out of this crisis in a positive way, it would be brilliant for the movement and for the rest of the world. And I see good signs as well on this. Some people actually, it can be visible that some people take initiative, define their roles, and how can they be helpful and try to re-establish a meaningful relationship with the rest of the world. So I've recently came across with these two Twitter accounts that you've seen on the screen, Others Info and Mağdurun Doktoru. One is established by the doctors to help people in their health issues and diagnosis, and at least advise them on the phone or via Twitter, help them, guide them in this difficult time if they are in a difficult place in Turkey or abroad, to reach a free care system in this way. So these are the doctors from the movement who eventually established such a support network, probably after they have actually managed themselves a relatively secure position, let's say, or relatively understandable or meaningful situation wherever they are. Now they're trying to help people with their own profession, which is a very, very healthy way forward, I would say. And similar things, the Others Info is a number of solicitors. I know some of them in UK have established this to help mainly people in Turkey, because as you know, in Turkey, if you are persecuted with Gülenism or Hizmet membership, it's very hard for you to find a solicitor to represent you, because any solicitor that represents you might go into jail as well. So that makes it almost impossible to get advice from solicitors, because they are afraid from themselves. Recently, very famous solicitors have been arrested because they were questioning the court cases and everything. So in that case, this is a valuable contribution from solicitors. I wanted to spend at least 2 minutes to thank them. And these sort of networks, the way I perceived and I observed them, emerged on an individual level, and it helped the movement to movement members to come to terms with the depth of the crisis and trying to make a useful contribution. So in that sense, this sort of actions, having a new direction, serving the world in new ways, and helping brothers and sisters back in Turkey in more sustainable ways, will eventually counterbalance this over-politicization, because this is very much about Turkey related and Turkey centered, and I think the movement has its future in the West, at least for next 5-10 years. And the quicker it grasps that idea, the better it would be. But then again, we'll see whether the movement and the individuals within the movement will actually do that. That's my answer to first question, and this is then the first question. I'll move to the second question.